Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Caroline McGraw, the founder of A Wish Come Clear, which is a blog giving you carte blanche to change your life. And the phrase "A Wish Come Clear" is actually my younger brother Willie's brainchild. He's smart and he's funny, and he also has autism and some struggles with aggression and self-injurious behavior. He is a perfectionist who writes in erasable ink, yet he also finds purposeful mistakes hilarious. So instead of saying "a wish come true," he'll say "a wish come blue" or "a wish come clear." In other words, Willie creates purposeful mistakes as a way to invite joy into his life. And as a recovering perfectionist, I think this is pretty profound. So I created this community as a place where people can let go of the need to be perfect and just start getting real. And today marks the start of our new video interview series called You Need to Read. And the way this series goes is that once a month I do a video interview with a writer that I love and I post it here to the blog. You get to know some great writers, they share their work with the world, we do some giveaways, everybody wins. And our series motto is a quote from Philip Pullman. "We don't need a list of rights and wrongs, tables of do's and don'ts. We need books, time, and silence. Thou shalt not is soon forgotten, but once upon a time lasts forever." And today, I'm honored to be speaking with life coach and writer Jill Winski. Jill is a blogger and a writer at The Artist's Nest, offering support for the vulnerability that comes with creativity. She's a Martha Beck certified life coach, and she helps sensitive people who are feeling stuck, vulnerable, and overwhelmed to take better care of themselves so that they can move forward with their creative work and put their amazing gifts out into the world. Her essays and coaching sessions have already helped me so much. She is a wise woman. She has a lot to offer. So welcome, Jill.
Thank you so much, Caroline. So happy to be here.
I am so glad that you agreed to do it. This was the first email that I sent asking anyone to come and join the series because I knew that, the conversations we've had, I've learned so much from you, and I'm thrilled that you could join us.
Oh, same here. I'm so glad you reached out. I was really excited to get your email about this. I think it's a great idea, and I love the series motto. I think it's awesome.
Thank you. Me too. So just to start, let's help people get to know you a little bit, share a bit about your journey. You've talked about and written about struggling with chronic fatigue, high sensitivity, being an introvert. So could you share a bit about how all of those things have led you to where you are now?
Yeah, it really, my struggles with chronic fatigue and really just being sick happened about 20 years ago. I was just out of college, a couple years out of college, and I started to experience a lot of anxiety and panic attacks. And I really didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know how to cope with it. And somehow it culminated in this physical illness where I was just sick for a long period of time. The year that I was 25, I was just really sick. It started out as just a regular seeming like a cold or flu that I just couldn't shake, and I couldn't shake it for months. And that's a pretty young age to be really sick like that. Up until that point, I had a friend who would always say, "Oh, Jill, you're always healthy as a horse," because I never got sick. And suddenly I got really ill. And it was to the point that I couldn't work. I had to move back in with my parents, which is totally what you don't want to do at age 25,
Sure.
And it was kind of like a real life changer for me because I had to start looking really deeply at basically how I had been caring for myself or not caring for myself. I had always been someone to really push myself very hard. I was like a super overachiever as a kid. And I thought that was the way to be, and I basically got to this point where, when you're lying like in a hospital bed and you are like, they're having to, hydrate you through a tube, you start to get a different perspective. You're like, maybe I haven't really been living in the best possible way.
Oh man.
So that started a journey at that age for me where I started doing a lot of deeper exploration of just who do I want to be, who am I, and how do I want to be in this world. He basically, at that time, what I wanted to be was a writer. And I had been, at the time I became ill, I had been working a full-time job, and then I would go after work to like a coffee house and I would write for hours because I was like, hey, I'm going to be this writer, you know. But within that dream, I was pushing myself really, really hard, and I wasn't happy, and I got sick. So I kind of emerged from all that, and it took several years to emerge from that. And I started to live a little bit more of a simpler and calmer life, and I let go of a lot of relationships that had not really, I had been really overly attentive and it's like a super achiever in my relationships as well. And so I let go of a lot of relationships, and I started to kind of rebuild. And in my early 30s, I went to grad school and I got my master's degree in creative writing. And that was a wonderful experience. And I learned so much about the craft of writing, and I was so supported in my writing. But what I noticed during that experience was that I thought I had wanted to write and teach writing. And what I noticed during that experience was that I worked as a tutor in the creative writing department. And I noticed that I really cared a lot more about people's personal struggles than I did about the craft of their writing. I cared about the craft of writing, but what I really was always like, why are you writing this? You know, what's coming up for you that's causing you to write this? You know, and I always was like so interested in, especially like the people I tutored who were introverts, and they were talking about their struggles with introversion, and or I feel weird, you know, what's wrong with me? And so sort of in a roundabout way, over the years, I was led to life coaching. I read one of Martha Beck's books when I had left grad school. I read her book, Finding Your Own North Star, in around 2008. And I was totally in a place where I had left grad school, and I was like, what am I doing? I'm not teaching writing, you know. And I ended up in 2010 going through life coach training with Martha Beck, and that's kind of been my path up to leading to here.
Wow, that is amazing. Oh man, so many places I could go with that. And I definitely want to talk more later about what does it mean to be an overachiever in relationships? What is it like to hang out with Martha Beck? Like, all of these questions come up for sure. But before I forget, I wanted to ask where the idea and the name for your blog came about too, because I confess I usually stop whatever I'm doing and read the latest post like right away. So The Artist's Nest, how did that get started?
Well, when I started my blog, I thought my original concept as a life coach was I thought I wanted to work with perfectionists and procrastinators. And so my original blog title had been something like, I don't remember it to tell you the truth, but it had something to do with perfectionism and procrastination. And, you know, they're kind of, I like to call them evil twins, you know. And but somehow, as I was working with my earliest clients, I realized that, you know, perfectionism and procrastination were actually symptoms of something else. And I realized that my people, the people I worked with, were actually tended to be sensitive people who pushed themselves really hard, but really wanted to get their creative work out into the world, you know. But they needed to figure out a better way to do that. And what I realized was that, you know, there's creative people, especially perhaps who are highly sensitive, can have a tendency to be really, really hard on themselves. The path is to push our work out into the world, you know. And so I came up with the name The Artist's Nest because I felt like a nest, we needed more nesting, you know, we needed more comfort, more coziness, more kindness toward ourselves in order to do what we needed to do, not more pushing. And that was how I came up with that name. And interestingly, the only negative comment I've ever received on my writing was someone commented that was such a lame title for my blog.
Really?
And it was like, and I just laughed because I had such a very specific reason for naming it that, that his comment didn't bother me at all. I was like, you know, I totally have a real deep reason for, naming it this. So
Yeah. Oh, I can relate to that on so many levels. Not only because when I first started A Wish Come Clear, it was all about, let me write about being a special needs caregiver and my friends with special needs. That was totally the focus. And that was where I was then, and that was beautiful and good. But then I realized later, I wasn't writing 10 tips for like how to manage a meltdown. It was me looking at, what is the deeper meaning behind this, and like, what are these people teaching me about life? And like you said, it kind of evolved into like, oh, this is sort of a, like, not a symptom, but this is sort of pointing me toward what I actually care about.
Exactly. Which is so often what happens in life, that, where the place we think we want to go is really just a pointer. It's not necessarily like, it's not the mountain in the distance. It's like just the guide toward the mountain or something. But at least we kind of mistake, a lot of times, well, I think this is where I want to go. And it's such an unfolding, I think, that happens, as opposed to like being really goal directed, I think, and what you're describing as well. It sounds like it was an unfolding for you.
It was, and that's a great word too, because I'm thinking nest, wings, unfolding, like the imagery totally works. So English majors geeking out right here. This is happening. And that also reminds me of, so you have a great blog post called You Only Ever Need to Do One Thing, which is something I repeat to myself like fairly often. And I heard it first on your blog, so thank you.
Oh, cool.
But for folks who haven't read it, it's all about the idea that we tend to crave getting things done and crossing things off our list. But you write that it is being engaged with the process that I crave, not getting to the finish line. And I just thought that was so profound. It's like, I am so driven to finish things, but often I forget, like, wow, the place I'm happiest is when I'm really focused and I'm in the middle of a piece of writing and I'm, playing with it, moving around in it. So yeah, can you talk about maybe how you've experienced that in your own life, like rushing to the finish line, but then realizing like, wait, this isn't the real goal.
Yeah. I think that, my grad school experience was a lot like that. I had and I still have several unpublished novels, and it's funny because it was kind of almost like it turned out that the finish line of those novels was almost like the process was the finish line. And I in my earlier in my 20s, and my like really driven, like I must write, I had this idea I have to publish a novel by the time I'm 27, and at the time I was like, 27 is so old, in fact, and yes, now I'm like, what was I thinking? But it's funny because the process of doing that writing, and I love writing fiction, I love it, but the process of it was almost like the goal is I don't know, I feel like the process of writing in and of itself is so joyous to me that it's almost like, and that's not to say I don't want to finish things. Finishing is important, and getting our work, shipping is important for sure. Yes. But in terms of the just do one thing, it's I feel like I'm a real, I like to check off to-do lists. I even write things on to-do lists that I forgot to put on the list, like after I've done it, so I can write it down and then check it off. Yep. I mean, and that's all well and good, except that I think a lot of times we really make things so complicated for ourselves by believing there's a lot to do, and very often, especially when we're in those times of overwhelm, if we can just focus on one thing, that one thing, usually the unfolding of that one thing will usually point us to the right next step, or the next indicated step, as a friend of mine likes to say. What is the next indicated step? And that's really all we ever need. We just need to know what that next indicated step is. But our minds really, because they love control, yes, our minds really want to know, like, well, it's this step and this step and this step. And we often get way ahead of ourselves. So focusing on just one thing can bring us back to the present moment what really needs to be done right now. And as that one thing unfolds, we may find that what we thought was the next thing after that doesn't even need to be done, or that it's something completely different.
Oh, I love that. That is perfect. Thank you. Seriously, it's like short testimonial. The 2 times that we've done coaching before, I have just felt that tremendous sense of peacefulness afterward, of just like, oh, thank God, I don't have to have it all figured out. What a relief. Like, it's just so great.
That's so great to hear, because that's, I think for any coach, that's, we want to help our clients access more peace. You know, that's the goal. So that's great to hear.
Thank you. Before I forget, I want to circle back to that idea that you touched on in the first part of the interview, just the kind of being an overworker and trying too hard in relationships, because I have a feeling that a lot of people can relate to that. So could you say a bit more about that and what that looks like?
I think that some of my relationship issues have had to do with being what might be called previously being what might be called an unskilled empath, you know, as opposed to a skilled empath. So
yeah,
I was picking up a lot of stuff from other people all the time. This is especially what happened when I kind of crashed and burned in my 20s, that I was picking up other people's stuff, and I believed it was mine to fix. It was mine to take care of. It was mine to, if I was in a relationship with someone who was having a hard time, I had to drop everything and help them right then, because helping them with their stuff made me feel better about my stuff, you know? And that, you know, was one of those things that I started after I got sick when I was in my 20s. I started reading a lot of books, and I started to realize how I could become more of a skilled empath, you know, and recognize and you know, pick up other or notice other people's stuff without taking it on, you know, without completely becoming enmeshed with them. And there was a lot of unhealthy enmeshment in my family growing up, so it was just natural that when I moved into the adult world, I was just kind of like, oh, let me just merge with you, you know?
Yes.
And it just wasn't a healthy way to be, but it did take me several years, and I still work on this, you know, that I can have empathy for someone and compassion for them, and I can also recognize that they are whole and they are creative and they can you know, take care of themselves, you know. And that's been a tricky and long-term thing for me, but it's like a world of difference compared to how I was living back then. You know, it feels like I understand that you're here and I'm here and we are separate and care about each other, you know, and that's really different than believing that we are somehow merged and we're all tangled up together.
Yes, amen, sister. I can relate to that so much, and that I like that you emphasize that there's a real love and respect aspect to it, of like, you are creative, you can solve your own problems, I don't have to solve all of them for you. The idea that you have the answers for your next right step, your next indicated step. I don't necessarily have them, much as I would like to help you. Exactly.
That's one of the fundamental, you know, the underlying sort of foundation of coaching is knowing that our clients are creative, resourceful, and whole, you know, and that's really what a coach does. Is it, you know, as opposed to like a mentor or a consultant, a coach is helping clients connect to their own inner wisdom, which they have, you know, they have it in spades, that a lot of times they just need some help in connecting to it.
Yes, very well said. So your most recent blog post also ties in really well with this. Well, second most recent since we scheduled the interview.
Yeah.
So it's titled "How Self-Acceptance Can Help You Move Forward When It All Feels Like Too Much." And I really like any post in which you talk about, here I was going along my merry way trying to be Superwoman, and then I realized, oh wait, I'm human. I can accept myself in all of my humanity. So maybe can you talk more about being guided from a place of acceptance?
Yeah. Well, I think that there are a lot of messages out there that are about like playing big, and really sort of taking ourselves to our limits and really challenging ourselves a lot. And I think that's all good to an extent, but I often find that I need the opposite message, which is that, it's okay for me to be human. It's okay for me to, in fact, not play big all the time. And that there's a humility that comes from just the recognition that we're human, we're human beings. And we do have limitations. And I think a lot of people in the personal growth world hate to hear that. Like, we have limitations. You mean we're unlimited?
Right.
It's not true, unfortunately. And that was part of when I got really sick in my 20s. That was one of my big learnings, that, oh wait, I actually am human. I'm in a human body, and even though I have this really visionary aspect to myself, I actually am here on the earth in a physical body that actually has needs.
Yep.
And I really just find that, for me, there's just something about, it takes me away from my perfectionism, to recognize I don't have to be pushing so hard all day, every day. It's actually okay. Like, I'm not the one keeping the earth on its axis. It really is okay for me to calm down, take a breath, and do less. And that's one of my mantras of this year, is really less is more, and and I find that when I remind myself of that, my life goes so much better. It really does. It really allows me to kind of pare away the excess and the stuff I'm doing that I don't need to be doing. When I just remind myself, Jill, you are not, you are human. You're not Wonder Woman, whatever. You really, for me, that's the message that I actually need. The message of you have no limitations and you can do it all is a very scary message for me. It doesn't work for me. But I can totally see too how people who have a different kind of orientation to life, that may be exactly the message that they need. But for me, the message is like, whoa, it's okay to slow down. You can slow down, and you can still have success if you slow down,
I love that, because I agree there's totally that place and time where, in my own life, where it is really great to have somebody say, why don't you take a shot at that big thing? Or why don't you pitch to TEDx or send that essay to the New York Times or whatever. And that's been wonderful. But on the more day-to-day basis, I'm similar to you of like, I have needed that permission to just like, hey, look, it's okay to just slow it down a little bit, take it down a notch, because I think most of the folks listening to this will probably relate to, it's not hard for me to push myself really hard. Like, that's the easy way for me.
Exactly. Exactly. And for some people, I also think depending on how your natural energy moves, I think for some people a kind of a push energy is their natural energy, and it doesn't feel exhausting for them. But for me, that's not really my natural energy. My natural energy is a little more flowing. It's a little more subtle. It's a little more gentle. So when I get into that really push place, it's like I'm actually being somebody else, if that makes sense.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Yeah, but like you said, and I loved your recent post where you were talking about asking people to participate in this series, and you were like, asking is like, wow, why not ask? People can say yes. And I think it's so true. I had a writing teacher at one point who said, why not start at the top when you're submitting your writing? Why not submit to the New Yorker? Why not? And I thought that was so freeing as well, because we sometimes think, well, I got to start at the bottom and work my way up, but it doesn't always work that way. And so I think it's about, what message feels most liberating to you on a particular day. And whatever's feeling most liberating is probably your truth, for that day or that week or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you said that about like pushing doesn't feel like my natural energy, it definitely reminded me of Martha Beck's whole concept of the integrity cleanse. And it's like
Yeah.
I need to go with what's in my integrity, and that might look very different from day to day. But as long as
Right.
you're going with, okay, this feels like, yeah, I'm in alignment. I'm the
Right.
same person from one place to another. I'm in
Right.
integrity.
Right, absolutely, absolutely, and it really is so much of so much of it is about feeling out the energy from day to day, and where are you from day to day? What do you need today? And what you need today may look very different tomorrow, and that's okay. That's where you are in these different days, and I think we really all do embody all energies within us. So we may like really, feel like, oh, I'm gonna go out there and like really do it, one day, and the next day that doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel like us. It doesn't feel like we're in integrity, and that's okay.
Yeah. Oh, something else that I really like about your blog and that caught my attention like from the very first was that you write about the details of those different days. Like you write about, okay, this is a day where I really felt strong, and this is a day where I needed to curl up in a blanket, and you kind of let people see all of those details and all of those changes. And I love that you talk about your routines, because I am always very interested in like, well, what exactly does this person do? Like they say they have a ritual, but what is that ritual?
Yeah.
Like I want to know. So you've written about how your morning ritual is really important to you and grounding. So could you tell us what's in it and how you developed it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple. It's basically I feel that I have to move my body as part of my morning ritual. I have a really hard time feeling grounded in the day if I haven't moved my body first. So my morning ritual always involves going out and walking.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I live in Chicago, and so sometimes it can be hard to achieve that, especially in the winter. But I really try to do it as much as I can. Go out and walk, and I usually combine that with getting my coffee out somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the ritual is just kind of this really like, saying hello to the people in the coffee shop, and then getting my coffee and walking. And it depends on what I have going on for the day. Some mornings I have a little more time than others, but I always try to get in, I would say, at least a 10 to 15 minute walk where I'm really moving my body.
Mm-hmm.
And then I come back to my home and I go to my journal and I do morning pages, and Julia Cameron's morning pages, which I'm sure most of your viewers know about, which is, just like, she suggests 3 longhand pages in a notebook of just whatever. It's like a brain dump, it's just whatever's going on for you in your head is okay to put on that page. And that's another part of just, sort of grounding my sensitive nervous system, like at the beginning of the day. And that's it. I mean, that's the ritual. And it's been that way for really many years, although it like when I was working full time in an office, it was a little different. Before work, I couldn't really take a walk as much, but so it's changed a little. But for the most part, it's the same as it's been for many years. And I just, my journal is like a really safe space for me. And when I start the day with some connection there, it just connects me to myself so that I can then move out and connect to others. But I feel that I need the self-connection first. For me, it's most empowering to have the self-connection first and then move out into connecting with others.
Yes, me too. It's like I will willingly get up that hour earlier just so I can have that sense of I'm not diving right in to the rest of the world.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know for me, like when I was growing up, and probably, well into my 20s, up to my point of getting sick and kind of retooling everything, I would just get up and dive into the day, and I could feel so ungrounded, just so. I found that I was so much more easily overstimulated by whatever happened in the day, because I would just jump into the day with kind of no reflecting time, and just going back to what I know about my natural energy is that my natural energy is fairly contemplative and reflective, and it's a kind of a slow moving energy. So if I get up and I kind of jump into the day like this, I'm kind of going against my own natural energy, the way it moves, and it's like no wonder I'm burned out then by noon if I approach things that way.
Yes, and I used to guilt myself over this because when I was a caregiver, living in L'Arche, it was like I wanted to get as much sleep as I could, so I'd roll out of bed and just dive right into morning routine. And I noticed actually it was, similar to you, I wanted that quiet time, but I noticed after a while, after I'd gotten accustomed to it, I kind of carved out these little restorative spaces like in the routine. Yeah. And people in my house would notice them. They would be like, I noticed that you always sing when you help Walton with his shower. Or like, I noticed that like you sit staring out the window with your coffee and like, because as you get better at the job, obviously you can be a little more efficient. So you're like, okay, I can take 5 minutes here and I can ground myself. Right. So I agree that for me that was like a lifesaver. I needed that.
Well, and it's interesting how intuitively we find those little ways to connect with ourselves and kind of recharge ourselves, and it sounds like you were intuitively doing that like throughout the course of your day, which is interesting.
Yeah, and it was funny because I had one of my housemates at one point say to me like, she had this sort of profound realization. She was watching me, like eat cereal and stare out the window, and she was like, and you were just resting and it was so peaceful, and I just realized that I needed more of that in my life. And she had this like wonderful experience like from watching me, and I cracked up laughing because I was like, friend, that day that you were watching me, I was feeling really guilty because like there was so much chaos going on in the house that morning, and like I wasn't assigned to be on routine, so I had no like actual responsibility to deal with it. But it's that enmeshment that you talked about. Like I had intense guilt that I'm not pitching in, I'm not helping, like, oh my God, they need me. And she was like, I was so inspired that you were so zen. And I was like, I love that you thought that.
Yes.
But by that point, I had lived there long enough to know that, like, if I don't sit here and get quiet, like, the rest of my day will be really hard. So,
yeah. Makes total sense, yeah.
So going on with this, another post that I really liked about on your blog, is this idea of self-care when your normal has changed. So like self-care when you're sick, self-care when you start a new job, and how there is that constant adjustment of what worked yesterday might not work today. And, yes, ritual is important and everything, but just being willing to like play with it and tweak things a little bit. And so I guess with that in mind, I wanted to ask you about your Stellar Self-Care Coaching Program and like the group coaching, and just kind of talk about how you work with people around self-care.
Yeah, it's really been an evolving process. I created this program in 2015, and I realized after I had done it with a few people that it needed to not just be coaching, but it needed to be a combination of teaching and coaching, because there were so many concepts. Some concepts from Martha Beck, some concepts I've learned elsewhere that I saw that would be really helpful for people if they could just understand these kind of basic concepts. For example, the fact that highly sensitive people, it can be very helpful for them to view when they're feeling bad in some way, view it through the lens of stimulation. Are you feeling really overstimulated right now? Because I know for me, one of the evolving things in my self-care was just noticing that a lot of times when I thought, oh, everything is really wrong and it really sucks, I realized that I was just overstimulated. That was it. There was nothing else really wrong except that I just needed to calm myself, and there was too much going on around me, or maybe too much going on within me. So we look a lot at those kinds of things in the program, and and I've been doing it one-on-one with people. It's an 8-session program, and I'm going to try it this time in March with a group, like a small group of maybe 6, because I think that one of the things that people who've done it one-on-one have said to me is that they love the safety, the feeling of safety that they get one-on-one. But I also think that in a group that feels safe, it's so great to have that sense, wow, other people are struggling with this exact same thing. I'm not weird, and so I'm going to try it in the group format in March and see what happens. But it's really been, it's just a number of concepts like sort of fundamental basic concepts for people who are sensitive, who tend to push themselves, would like a better relationship with themselves in terms of self-care. And, you know, when I say self-care, I think self-care is like a way overused and kind of vague term nowadays. I think it's kind of almost like a buzzword term. And in so many ways, what I'm talking about is kind of self-responsibility. Like how can we be responsible to our unique selves and recognize that taking responsibility for ourselves may not look like, you know, how this person takes responsibility for themselves, you know, but that it's something. This has been really fun work to do because it's tailored to each client, and it's been so interesting for me to see, you know, that different people need, like, within all these concepts that I teach in the program, different people need to tweak little different things, and some people are struggling really over here, and then other people are struggling more over here. And it's fun. It's really fun work, and I'm always really inspired by my clients. So that's kind of like, you know, the icing on the cake of all of it is that my clients are so super inspiring and so great that I always come away like, because this stuff is all hard for me too, you know, and I'm really teaching what I need to learn here in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, it's been a really fun and rewarding program to teach.
Man, I love what you said about self-care being about self-respect, because you reminded me of, so in The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron, who we were talking about earlier with the morning pages, she has this great passage where she talks about, are you self-destructive? And how often we misunderstand that question, and we think of it as being in these very sort of traditional, obvious forms of, like, do you drink too much? Do you smoke too much? Like, are you that kind of self-destructive? And she says, no, what this actually means is, are you destructive of your unique self? And that you can do that in very subtle ways, like getting really overstimulated when you know, like, okay, I need quiet, and things like that. And so, yeah, it's like, I think your coaching teaches people to be self-respecting and not self-destructive. Yeah, absolutely. There are very subtle ways that we can actually be self-destructive, and, you know, we may not be aware of them. You know, Jennifer Loudon has a term, I think she calls them soft addictions, or soft comforts, or something like that. And there are little ways like that sometimes people start to notice, you know, as they go through this work. You know, I'm having like 10 Diet Cokes a day, and I've been considering that okay because it's Diet Coke, but it feels really terrible, you know, and stuff like that they may not have even been noticing. Like, well, they'll start to become aware of. And yeah, I mean, there are some really sort of non-obvious ways that we can actually be self-destructive. But ultimately, I do think everything we do, really, I think at the bottom of it all is we are really about self-preservation. Even our seemingly misguided stuff that we're doing, there's some part of us that wants to help us in doing it. We just may not be going about it in the right way. And that is one of my sort of fundamental beliefs in helping people with self-care, is that even if they think they're screwing everything up, there's a part of them that really is trying to help them, even if it doesn't look like it. You know, they're trying to help themselves. They just may be going about it in a way that isn't working so well. So how can we shift that so that we're understanding that, yes, you are caring for yourself, but you're trying to care for yourself in this way, but let's look at a way that we can maybe flip it, you know, and a way that feels better, because this doesn't seem to be working so well. But all of it, I really think everything in us does really, we want self-preservation. You know, we want to love ourselves. We want to thrive. But sometimes there are little parts of us that are going about that differently than other parts. And so they're fighting. You know? Yeah. Man, that is profound, that all of these aspects of ourselves are working toward our health and wholeness, but sometimes they're going about it in ways that they think are helpful, but turn out to be counterproductive. And so, yeah, it's about kind of bringing them all back into line and into integrity and being like, let's all work together now.
Exactly. It really is. I mean, if you think about like arguments between parents and children, you know, it's usually like sometimes they ultimately both want the same thing. You know, it's just the way they're going about it is you know, causing the clash. But I think that's true for the parts within us as well. You know, we really, it all is kind of working toward the same thing. It just doesn't seem like it. So if we can kind of take a look, you know, hold up a microscope and sort of be like, what does this part want? And what does this part want? And, you know, get them talking. I mean, that's a lot of that is what self-care is about, really. It's like getting all parts of us kind of on the same page or on the same side.
Ooh, I love that. And that's such a perfect segue into what I wanted to share with readers and viewers, which is that, Jill, you have been so generous as to offer a free coaching session. So we'll have people leave a comment on this post. I'll post the guidelines for how people can enter the contest to win a session with you. And I'm just psyched for whoever that lucky person will be, because it'll be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally look forward to, you know, whoever it is. I know your readers are all awesome. So
I'm biased, but I think they're pretty stellar. So, you know, they should get some stellar self-care coaching from you as well. Well, thank you so much. This has just been brilliant, and I'm really glad that we got to talk.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm a huge fan of yours, Caroline. So I'm so thrilled to just sit here, and I'm sure we could talk, you know, for another couple hours.
I was gonna say, yeah, I knew when we said 30 minutes, it was like, we're not gonna have any trouble with this. This is not gonna be a problem at all. So
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again.
So much.